My name is Mark Toone. I've served as the senior pastor of Chapel Hill Presbyterian Church in Gig Harbor, Washington since 1987. I led my first tour to the Holy Land in 1984. I knew nothing about leading tours and frankly wasn't even that interested in making the trip. But I was newly ordained and figured that every pastor ought to visit the Holy Land once in his lifetime. My first group wasn't very large, 15 as I recall, and it wasn't a very sophisticated trip. But I fell in love with the place. More than 20 years later, I can say that my trips to Israel have had a profound impact on my ministry. And those pilgrims who have joined me will never read the scriptures the same way again, and return with their hearts bound to those with whom they shared a journey of a lifetime. My daughter Rachel caught the travel bug early. She celebrated her first birthday outside Vienna, Austria. And when she was old enough, she asked, "Daddy, will you take me to Israel someday?" So once again, I worked with Yalla Tours to design a pilgrimage that I knew would change people's lives, including my daughter's. And for her 13th birthday, I took Rachel and 85 other Chapel Hill folks on my 6th trip to the Holy Land. It was as magical as the first time. After trying a few different itineraries, I now plan my Holy Land trips to circle enticingly around Jerusalem, saving that holy city for last. Jerusalem must be the grand finale.
And Tel Aviv is always the starting point. There is so much to see, and so much that is mystical about the early morning hours in Israel. Our very early morning walk ended with a visit to the hotel roof. Rachel and I watched the sunrise together. Gazing out over the city, I was struck by the fact that somewhere very near this place, on the roof of a seaside home owned by a man named Simon the Tanner, the Apostle Peter had a vision that would throw open the doors of faith to the Gentile world. My religious heritage began on another roof somewhere near here, overlooking these same warm Mediterranean waters. When we make our short bus trip to Caesarea, we are following that story in the book of Acts. It was here in this magnificent Roman city, complete with a man-made harbor, that a centurion named Cornelius invited Peter to come and share the good news of Jesus with him. Caesarea is the perfect first-day visit. For travelers who have never seen ancient ruins, Caesarea serves up an eyeful. The movie at the Visitors Center takes you on a journey 2 millennia in the past, offering a glimpse of this once thriving center of Roman government, which now stands in ruins. But they are magnificent ruins even still. The remains of aqueducts that carried water from 20 miles away still astound. An impressive Crusader city welcomes you. And more impressive is the theater set in the sands on the Mediterranean's edge. If we are early enough and the crowds are thin, I will sing a hymn from the acoustically perfect center of the stage. And it is there that I read Acts 10 and recount the birth of the Gentile Christian church. Megiddo, Armageddon, as it is called in John's Revelation, presents us with the ancient past and the prophetic future. One of Solomon's fortified cities, Megiddo offers a panoramic view of the Jezreel Valley stretched out below, with Nazareth in the distance. There's the Mount of Transfiguration to your right, and looking the other way you can see Mount Carmel. It is a breathtaking snapshot of thousands of years of Judeo-Christian history. After you've taken your pictures, head underground for an impressive tour of a hand-hewn canal carved out of the rock to ensure unlimited water in times of siege. We spotted Mount Carmel from Megiddo. Now we visit it in person. You can climb to the roof of the monastery, but I prefer to gather along the tree-lined cliff as we imagine what it must have been like for Elijah to stand against 400 prophets of Baal. I love to surprise my pilgrims with unannounced stops. Cana is a wonderful surprise. Ancient water jugs stand as sentinels in the 2 main churches there, reminding us of Jesus' first miracle, the turning of water to wine. But the occasion of that miracle was a wedding. At the site where Jesus honored the institution of marriage, I invite the unsuspecting couples to stand before me, remove their rings, and recite anew their wedding vows. There is never a dry eye in the house. Then on to Galilee. The Galilee is my favorite area. For sheer beauty, nothing surpasses it in Israel. Early morning walks along the water's edge remind me of this, the most fruitful area of Jesus' ministry. Within a few miles of this site, Jesus performed most of his miracles, taught most of his parables, cast out demons, proclaimed the coming of the kingdom of God. For another surprise, invite your pilgrims to join you for a sunrise service along the lakeside. They will never forget the sunrise over the hills of the Gadarenes, nor the sun's first reflections upon these sacred waters. A meandering drive through a verdant valley brings you to Caesarea Philippi, the most idyllic of sites in the Galilee. You can still see the outlines of one of the most popular pagan temple complexes in Roman Palestine. Gorgeous streams flow from beneath the nearby mountain. Wander through the ancient ruins once dedicated to the god Pan. Pass your fingers over the stones. Have your picture taken on top of a column. You are touching ancient history. Then sit here together in the shade and relive the moment when Jesus asked the most important question his disciples would ever answer. Who do you say that I am? Each pilgrim answers that question in his or her own heart. What better time to return to the waters of the Jordan River for a renewal of baptismal vows? I had the privilege of baptizing my daughter and my father. When it was my turn, my pastor friends seemed to hold me under longer than I thought necessary. Even those who didn't care to be immersed could share in this wonderful experience. When you enter Capernaum, you feel like you are on holy ground. The synagogue there, already ancient, is built upon an even more ancient foundation, the one where Jesus began his teaching ministry on that first Sabbath day. Read the account of the demoniac who disrupted the service while Jesus taught, and walk a few steps to the modern church that sits over the top of St. Peter's house. I'm always moved when I read the words of the Master in the very place he first spoke them. This land is not very large. A mile or so south of Capernaum is Tapka, a church built upon the site where Jesus fed the multitudes with the 5 loaves and 2 fish. The ancient mosaic in the floor of the church is one of the most famous in the Holy Land. The most beautiful view of the Galilee is from the Mount of Beatitudes, the traditional site of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. Pray a while in the exquisite chapel, then gather outside to read from Matthew's Gospel as you gaze out over the breathtaking vista below. The men on the tour may not appreciate it, but the ladies will insist that you stop at one of the diamond factories. Israel is the world leader in diamond cutting. Your trip up Mount Tabor will not be forgotten. A stream of taxis carry you from the bottom of the hill to the top of the traditional Mount of Transfiguration. This is also the place where Deborah led the army of Israel to victory over the Canaanite general Sisera. The arched crypt inside the church is a beautiful place to sing, and the mosaic of the Lamb of God slain for the sins of the world is my personal favorite. The trip back down is even more exciting than the one on the way up. Look across the valley, you'll catch glimpses of Jesus' hometown of Nazareth. Nazareth is the largest Christian city in Israel with the largest Arab community and the largest Christian church in the Holy Land, the Basilica of the Annunciation. The grotto holds the traditional site of Mary's home. The main sanctuary is adorned with images of the Virgin Mary, donated by nations from around the world, and crowned with a stunning cupola. But my favorite site in Nazareth is a short walk away through the bazaar to a Crusader church built over an ancient synagogue. If this is where the boy Jesus worshipped each Sabbath, what better place to pray for the young people on your trip?
The journey from the north to south of Israel doesn't take very long. Remember, this is a very small country. As you bypass Jerusalem on your way to the Dead Sea, you will quickly notice the change of scenery. From the lush greenery of the Galilee, you are now in the parched Judean wilderness.
The Dead Sea is the lowest point on the face of the earth. We stop at one of the many beautiful resort hotels along the shore. It is a wonderful rest for weary travelers. If you choose to venture into the water, what you can do can scarcely be considered swimming, and you don't want to get that water in your eyes or your mouth. But the salt content allows even the clumsiest of swimmers to perform amazing water ballet. Okay, maybe not amazing, but buoyant.
The absolute high point of your journey to southern Israel, literally, is the tabletop mountain called Masada. Of all the sites I visited on my first journey to Israel, I think I was more excited about Masada than any other. A short movie in the New Visitors Center recounts the story of 970 Jews who committed suicide on the mountaintop rather than fall into the hands of the Roman conquerors.
Masada was one of Herod the Great's architectural masterpieces. Here, in one of the driest regions in the world, his engineers developed a system to capture the rain so that not only could they survive, they could enjoy steam baths, cold baths, even an outdoor swimming pool, much of it hand-painted to look like marble. Look down from the great northern palace. You can still trace the outline of the Roman encampments even after 2,000 years. Ride the new cable car to the bottom, or, if you are more adventurous, hike down the snake path. Don't worry, there are no snakes. The route simply winds back and forth like a serpent. A stop on the way back to Jerusalem will make one of the more confusing pieces of Old Testament history come alive. The wilderness tabernacle is an exact reproduction of the tent that the Israelites carried with them, and all of its furnishings. The Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem is the most ancient church in the region, dating back to the 4th century. The tiny, candle-blackened grotto where Jesus was born is always a surprise to the first-time pilgrim. But when you sing Silent Night there, you realize that you are joining your voices to those of millions of pilgrims who followed in the footsteps of the Christmas shepherds. And finally, when the anticipation has built to a point where you don't think you can wait any longer, Jerusalem. The best first view of Jerusalem comes from the Mount of Olives. Looking down across the Kidron Valley and up to the Old City, you finally lay eyes upon the place that has been the center of world history for over 4,000 years. You will never forget your first view of the Temple Mount. The brilliant gold Dome of the Rock is a sparkling contrast to the rest of the city. From the top of the Mount of Olives, retrace the traditional route of Jesus' triumphal entry. Pause at Dominus Flevit, the place where Jesus wept over the ancient city. Continue down past the ancient Jewish cemetery and you finally arrive at the Garden of Gethsemane. Pause in the orchard to gaze upon the trees that were sprouts when Jesus prayed there. Read again the story that you have read so many times before. The Church of All Nations, built upon the rock where Jesus is believed to have prayed, is my favorite in Israel. The alabaster windows allow in a soothing purple light that bathes the sanctuary. Sit and pray. Lean down and touch the rock. Imagine that this is the very place where Jesus prepared himself for his final hours. The Gospels say that Jesus was taken from Gethsemane to the house of the high priest Caiaphas. Retrace these ancient steps yourself. Make your way down the stairs and into the dungeon beneath that house. Here, tradition says, Jesus was held before his trial. The cruelty and the terror of that moment will sweep over you. Mount Zion, the southern part of the Old City, is the location of King David's tomb. There you will also find the upper room where the Holy Spirit came upon the believers on the day of Pentecost. Herod the Great, the most prolific builder in Jewish history, transformed the Jerusalem temple into a magnificent complex that became known the world around. Great sections of his massive retaining walls remain to this day. Stand on the temple steps, the very steps that Jesus would have used when he entered the temple. We slowly recite the Psalms of Ascent as we climb one step after another, reliving the pilgrimage that was repeated by millions over the centuries. The corner of the Temple Mount soars above you. Pass under the remains of Robinson's Arch. All of these images will thrill you, but your first view of the Western Wall, that you will never forget. This place of prayer is the holiest site in all of Judaism. And the part that you see is but a fraction of the original wall, now covered by shops and homes built against it over the centuries. The wall excavations will give you a better idea of the massive scope of this project. You will walk nearly a quarter of a mile underground to reach the end of the tunnel. Your guide will point out the largest Herodian stone yet unearthed. It is the size of a Greyhound bus. Yad Vashem is a sobering, emotional reminder of the Holocaust. In the candle-lit children's memorial, haunting voices recite the names of 1.5 million children who lost their lives at the hands of the Nazis. In 1948, a shepherd boy in the Negev made the greatest discovery in the history of biblical archaeology. What came to be known as the Dead Sea Scrolls are on display at the Shrine of the Book. The Via Dolorosa, the Way of Sorrows, retraces the steps of Jesus on the way to the cross. It begins at Stephen's Gate, the site of the stoning of the first martyr of the Christian Church. Your first stop is the Pool of Bethesda and St. Anne's Church. You will not believe how beautiful Amazing Grace can sound until you have sung it in this church. The Way of Sorrows ends at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Constantine's mother, Helena, ordered this church built upon the site of the death and resurrection of Jesus. You'll want to walk inside when you have completed the Via Dolorosa. My favorite time to visit the Holy Sepulchre is in the pre-dawn hours. I'll lead early risers through the winding, silent streets of the old city. At this time of day, the crowds are thin, the sunlight begins to peek through the windows, and the holiness of this place seems more palpable to me. Caress the stone upon which the body of Jesus was laid in preparation for burial. Smell the incense. Listen to the hymns. It is a strange and marvelous place. The streets of Jerusalem beg to be explored both in the daylight hours and in the dark. You can hardly get lost, don't worry. The sights, smells, sounds, and the tastes of Jerusalem will overwhelm you. But for me, the most overwhelming sight in Jerusalem is just north of the old city, outside the Damascus Gate, the Garden Tomb. Discovered in the 19th century, it has become a favorite alternate site to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus. It is a peaceful green contrast to the dark grandeur of Holy Sepulchre. Meander your way through the garden pathways. As you listen to the singing of other worshipers, make your way through the open door of the tomb. See for yourself what the angels proclaimed on that first Easter. He is not here. He is risen. And finally, conclude this spiritual journey of a lifetime with the celebration of the Lord's Supper as you worship the risen Christ. For whatever reason you have resisted making your own pilgrimage to Israel, I cannot urge you strongly enough to make the journey. It will change your ministry, and it will change the lives of those who travel with you. And no one can do a better job of assisting you in planning this grand adventure than the professionals at Yalla Tours. They will partner with you as you design a trip of a lifetime. So, go for it. You will never regret it.